So welcome to everybody to another update, and yeah, this is a horror focused one. So even though I have bought other things alongside these films, they'll be in the next update. But yeah, because it's Halloween, look at horror films. So a lot of these have been on sale. HMV, Indicator, Our Video have had a lot of sales on lately in the past few weeks. So yeah, I decided to buy a lot of horror films as a result. So yeah, we've got plenty from Blu-ray labels, but we'll start off with the two that aren't from a specific Blu-ray label, and they are Addams Family and Addams Family Values. Now these are two really good horror comedies, quite frankly, from the early 90s. And in fact, the sequel is actually slightly better than the original. So yeah, two fantastic films directed by Barry Sonnenfeld, who I think went on to do Men in Black. But yeah, still, great cast. And yeah, both really rather good. And quite family friendly as well, as you can see, both PG. So yeah, get out and see these if you haven't somehow seen them yet. But if you have, well worth revisiting after all of this time. And then from 88 Films, a film that I have not unwrapped yet because the case has slightly been broken, so I'll have to take it back. But we have seven blood-stained orchids. So yeah, from Umberto Lenzi, who I've seen a fair few films from this year so far. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what this has in store, but not been able to see it yet because yeah, the case is broken and I don't like broken cases, so that will eventually get returned and replaced. Then from Shameless Entertainment, we have The Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward, directed by Sergio Martino, who again I've seen a fair few from in the past year or so, and yeah, he's pretty much really rather impressed me, and this is a really rather solid giallo film, quite frankly. It takes a bit of time to get the plot, well, see where the plot is kind of going, but it's really rather satisfying when you do realise where it's going, and then the twist also hits, and that's also really rather good as well. So yeah, so it's a film you have to stick with, but it's well worth the effort of sticking with it. Then we have a few from Arrow Video, first of which is The City of the Dead. Now, I wasn't expecting much from this, to be honest, but even though the aspects that take place outside of this spooky, fog-ridden town aren't particularly great, the rest of it is. And yeah, it's not particularly long either. It's only 78 minutes long. It's got Christopher Lee in a lead role, and yeah, also a double discer as well in terms of Blu-ray and DVD. So yeah, well worth seeing this if you haven't. It's not particularly long. It's shot really rather well in black and white, and yeah, far exceeded any expectations that I had. Then we have another giallo film, The Blood-Stained Butterfly. Now this is, yeah, a bit of a different kind of giallo because it's not particularly violent, to be honest. I know it's a 15 and everything, but compared to other giallo films like Deep Red or The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, this is nowhere near as violent as those films. But what it is highly engrossing and easily one of the best films that I have seen so far this year that I hadn't seen before this year. So yeah, do get out there and see it if you haven't already. It does still have some of the giallo aspects to it that you've become to know, like the black gloves, as you can see emphasised there in this booklet that comes with it. But yeah, it's directed by Duccio Tessari, who I don't think I've seen anything from before, but he put in a really good showing with this. And you get a few write-ups as well. Perversion Story, A Brief Introduction to the Italian Giallo by James Blackford. And then you also get Baroque and Roll, the film music of Gianni Ferrio, yeah, by Howard Hughes. Then you get Breaking the Fourth Wall in The Bloodstained Butterfly by Leonard Jacobs. So yeah, the score is great, by the way, and it's really rather nicely shot. But more crucially, the police investigative aspect of it is really well done as well. And yeah, it's been given a 4K scan as well on the original 35mm. So yeah, looks really rather great in terms of this release as well. Then we have The Snake Girl and the Silver-Haired Witch. Surprisingly, it comes with the slipcover, despite this coming out, was it earlier this year? No, it was last year. So despite the fact this came out last year, it's still got a slipcover coming with it, which I wasn't expecting. It's a really rather nicely done slipcover as well. But yeah, this is directed by, who was it? He did the Gamera films. Noriaki Yuasa. So yeah, despite the fact that he's done those Gamera films, which outside of the first one aren't particularly dark, this is a really rather effective horror film, and yeah, got some great visuals to it, some great ghost creatures as well to it as well, and yeah, you get a really rather nice booklet with it as well again. So yeah, you get Coils of Trauma, Symbolism of a Snake Girl by Raphael Corinelli, and then you've got About the Transfer as well. So it's not a massive deep dive into the film like say Bloodstained Butterfly, but yeah, again, it's been given a really rather nice restoration by Imagica Lab in Tokyo, in fact. So it's not like some American release or anything like that, or non-Japanese company have done any work on it. It's purely been a Japanese restoration, which means that, you know, any of the cultural references or any of the knowledge of how Japanese films are shot has been kept, quite frankly. So yeah, really, really good film. If you like the Gamera films, you might not like that much, but if you also like your horror films, your dark horror films, because it is a black and white, it is not quite as child friendly, should I say, despite her child being in the lead role as say the Gamera films, it is really, really rather good. And then we have from 1981 in fact, released 8 years ago though by our video, is The Beast Within. So yeah, released 8 years ago, don't have the limited edition version, it's just a standard version. And even though this is a little bit slow going in parts and does take a while to get to the whole, well, technically the meat of the film, it does at the end of the day come to an effective conclusion, and it's got one of the best transformation scenes in cinema. I think this predates American Werewolf in London, or it's around the same time as that, and The Howling, and what's the other one that I'm misremembering, the other werewolf film that came out? Come on, what is it? Wolfen. That's it. Three you know, werewolf films came out around then. But yeah, this is a good one. Even if, you know, the transformation scene is the main selling point, whereas also with those other three films, they have at least other elements to it. But, you know, got a good cast. It's got, who is it? Ronnie Cox, who was the villain in Total Recall. So, you know, the guy that starved everyone of oxygen, basically. And yeah, finally, from Indicator, we have some really rather nice releases. Not seen all of these though. I've seen most of all of the one box set that we've got, but there's 3 films here we haven't seen. So we'll look at the first film that I have seen, and that is The Revenge of Frankenstein. So this stars Peter Cushing. It's a sequel to the Curse of Frankenstein, I think it was called. Yeah, which came out I think a year or 2 prior to this. Yeah, really rather solid sequel, to be honest. And yeah, it keeps Peter Cushing as the kind of, you know, anti-hero, I guess you could say, but he's also quite a villainous role as well. So yeah, there's no real leading role here that has a, you know, a identifiable hero. Peter Cushing is definitely a lot darker in this and its predecessor than he would be in other Hammer horror films. But yeah, really, really solid sequel, and yeah, highly recommend trying it out if you haven't already. And then these films I haven't seen include Terror by Norman J. Warren, or directed by Norman J. Warren, should I say. Pretty sure I've seen a film from him before, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. Haven't heard much about this, and anything in some regards that I have heard, it haven't been particularly great, but it was going cheap, and yeah, I figured it was worth a chance. So yeah, hopefully it's good. Who's starring? Anyone I've heard of? Nope. But that doesn't matter. And then we also have another Hammer horror film, The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll. So yeah, filmed in Megascope and Technicolor. It's got Christopher Lee in it, so another Christopher Lee horror film that we're looking at. And yeah, I've seen plenty of Jekyll films before. I think I've got one, yeah, I'm Monster, which also starred Christopher Lee from the 70s. That was a pretty good one, but hopefully this is as good. Also from the 50s, 1959. Revenge of Frankenstein, by the way, was from 1958. And yeah, this is directed by Terence Fisher. The Revenge of Frankenstein was also directed by Terence Fisher. So I liked Revenge of Frankenstein. I've liked other Terence Fisher films as well. So yeah, hopefully this is a good one as well. And finally, in terms of the single releases, we have a Michael Carrera's film, The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. So yeah, this is the first sequel to the original Mummy film. Which one was that one? I'm looking at my massive arse shelf that has all of the films on it practically. And I think it was just called The Mummy or The Curse of the Mummy or one or the other. Why can't I find it? It should be alongside my other Hammer horror films, but yeah, it's a sequel to that basically, and yeah, unfortunately because I was kind of delayed in my indicator haul being delivered by a good few weeks, unfortunately, I actually had to I came across the 2 sequels to this before seeing this, so I've not seen this one yet, but there are 2 others after this, and the 3rd one is pretty good. The 4th one is a little bit of a letdown. There was a fair few production issues with that. At the time, the director died, for instance, and Peter Cushing bowed out after a day of filming. But yeah, hopefully this is pretty good. And yeah, I think I've seen stuff from Michael Carreras as well. So yeah, hopefully it's as good as whatever else I've seen from him before. So yeah, half bone, half bandage, and all blood-curdling terror. Horror. But yeah, still, hopefully we'll be good. But now we get to the meat of this update, and that is this box set. Now granted, I haven't got the 5 other Hammer box sets before this, which is a little bit of a shame, but I got into Indicator well into the releases of these, and by that point I'd bought the ones that are the standard editions of these the box sets after those came out, so didn't really seem necessary for me to go and hunt down these box sets, because not only would they be rather expensive, but I've already got some of the films from them already. But I didn't have any of the films out of these. Have seen them already before, so I knew what I was getting in for. But yeah, 3 of these 4 are excellent, quite frankly, and yeah, even the one I don't particularly like still has some elements to it that are enjoyable. So yeah, really nice box art. This is from one of the films as well, by the way, and yeah, really nice release, and I can have it just like that, and nobody will be the wiser that it's a 6th release in a box set that I don't actually have. So yeah, but can't imagine where I'd fit all of those box sets if I did actually get them, because I'm already running out of room. But yeah, firstly, from this box set we have the really rather excellent The Shadow of the Cat. Oh, The Shadow of the Cat, sorry. Now, I love films that have cats in them. Even if the evil cat, it's still going to be a film that's going to interest me in some way. And yeah, there are other films like this. We've got The Uncanny, which also stars Peter Cushing, which we've talked about before. We have the Lucio Fulci, The Black Cat. We have the Black Cat in other films as well. There's been various versions of that before, even in one of the Vincent Price, Roger Corman collaborations, which was an anthology film. But yeah, we also have Eye of the Cat, which is another Indicator release we've already had. So yeah, plenty of cat film. Oh, Cat's Eye as well, another one that is really rather good. So yeah, and this is another really rather solid one. And yeah, basically it's about a cat who sees its owner getting killed and then goes on a revenge spree to kill those who killed its owner. So yeah, fantastic, quite frankly. Directed by John Gilling, who's done other horror films that are fairly decent, like The Plague of the Zombies, which I think I have as well. Yeah. Also did The Reptile, I think it was called, which was decent, but not particularly brilliant. But this, yeah, this is great. Black and white shot as well. Stars Andre Morale and Barbara Shelley, who have also been in really rather good stuff before. And yeah, it's really, really well done. The cat is cute as hell as well, despite the fact it's obviously killing people off, but yeah, at the end of the day, they are villains. So yeah, you've got, in terms of this release, you've got Chasing the Shadow of the Cat by Craig Ian Mann, which was written in 2021, when I believe this box set was released. Then you've got Out of the Shadows, promoting The Shadow of the Cat, which was largely exhibited, by the way, in a double bill with The Curse of the Werewolf, which is another Hammer horror film. Yeah, you've got Thanks for the Memories, Barbara Shelley, by Michael Doyle from 2010, which I think is an interview with Michael Doyle. And then you got Critical Response at the Time, which includes an unnamed reviewer for the Monthly Film Bulletin who offered this dismissive one-line summary: uninterestingly plotted, old dark house thriller, overplayed, long drawn out, and fatally lacking in nuance and atmosphere. What? Got loads of atmosphere in this. Just the black and white cinematography alone is atmospheric. Never mind the setting and all that lot. But yeah, it's a 2K restoration by Shout Factory on this. So yeah, do highly recommend trying this out if you haven't already. And yeah, fantastic film. Easily one of my favourite horror films from the 1960s, as it's from 1961, clocking in at 79 minutes long. And there's the disc as well, which has a little cutie cat on it. So yeah, that's really rather good. And then from 1962, clocking in 82 minutes long, we have Captain Clegg. Now this is where the artwork for this comes from. And yeah, this also stars Peter Cushing. And yeah, also Oliver Reed in an early role of his. It's directed by Peter Graham Scott, who I don't think I've seen anything from before. But yeah, even though this isn't a particularly scary film, it is a really rather entertaining one. And there's Peter Cushing himself, looking as, yeah, as charismatic and adorable as ever, quite frankly. And yeah, again, you've got a load of extras in this booklet. You've got Creatures of the Night by Frank Collins. I'm not missing any of the ones out here. You got Original Sin, Peter Cushing's Keep Captain Clegg by Kieran Foster. Then you got Exploiting Captain Clegg, which has a lot of stuff in it that I can't really get my eyes around. And then Remedy Against Sin. Yeah, the critical response at the time, which was released in support of one of the other films that we're going to be looking at. But yeah, it's a really rather fun film. It's also called Night Creatures, which might be a bit more of a selling kind of title, to be honest, than Captain Clegg, which, yeah, doesn't sound like the most exciting film, but it is actually pretty good. And yeah, it looks great in Technicolor. And yeah, far more enjoyable than I was expecting, to be honest, because it didn't sound particularly great on the premise. And a film that did sound excellent in terms of the premise, but ultimately was a little bit of a letdown, is a film that Captain Clegg was supporting, and that is The Phantom of the Opera. Starring Herbert Lom, who I'm a fan of in plenty of films, and also directed by Terence Fisher, again, who I'm a fan of, who's directed several films I've enjoyed. But this is a little bit of a letdown. Nowhere near as good as the 40s version, and yeah, probably not as good as the silent version as well from the 1920s. But still, it's got plenty to like about it. The technicolor aspect of this is amazing. It looks absolutely gorgeous. The production looks lush as well. Herbert Lom is really good in the lead role, and yeah, but it just doesn't come together as an effective enough film, unfortunately. But still, it's a solid 3-star out of 5 film. But yeah, unlike Captain Clegg, which I give 3.5, and Shadow of the Cat, which I give 4 out of 5, it's just quite a bit of a disappointment, to be honest. But maybe I'll enjoy it again on another rewatch. But yeah, Phantom in the Fog by Adam Scoville is in this booklet. You get the cast of The Phantom of the Opera, which is an American press book for the film. Then you get Terence Fisher on The Phantom of the Opera. Yeah, and Terence Fisher actually says something in here that is probably a little bit relevant to why I probably wasn't as enjoyed it as much as I could have, because Phantom probably failed at the box office because it wasn't a typical gothic hammer film. It was more of a love story. People go to look for my love of a love story. I'm serious about that because it's why I love The Curse of the Werewolf. Never say I do like it best of them all, but I do really like it because all of them only come with a true love story. So yeah, that's probably what I was looking for. Was a traditional kind of gothic hammer horror film, and at the end of the day, it's more of a love story. So maybe if I go into it looking at it that way, I might enjoy it more. Then you got a critical response, and then about the restoration, which again is another 2K restoration by Shout Factory. So yeah, not particularly brilliant, but yeah, there's the original poster going for it, which does sell itself as a bit more dramatic. But yeah, hopefully if I go into it looking at it as a love story like Terence Fisher intended, then maybe I'll enjoy it more. And finally we have Nightmare, which again is a pretty good one. Directed by Freddie Francis, who again has done loads of the kind of hammer horror films before. Phantom of the Opera, by the way, also came out in 1962 and was clocking in at 85 minutes long, and there's a disc. Sorry, I forgot that there. But yeah, Nightmare. Released in 1964, clocking in at 83 minutes long. So none of these films out of this box set are particularly long. They're yeah, all 85 minutes or shorter. But yeah, this is a really good film, to be honest. It's got one of the most effective openings to a horror film I've seen in quite some time, to be honest. And yeah, again, more write-ups. You got Reliving the Nightmare by Emma Westwood. You've got the cast of The Nightmare. Can't remember if I've seen any of them in something before, but I might well have done, given how many films I've actually seen. And yeah, you got Exploiting Nightmare. You got another poster there. It's always really nice to see posters of old, especially when they're not included on the actual cover itself. Then you got Jimmy Sangster on Nightmare. And then you got Critical Response. And yeah, it's a Universal HD remaster with the source of this indicator release. And yeah, the mono soundtrack was remastered at the same time. So yeah, there's another poster, which is really rather nicely done. Yeah, 3 shocking murders. Did she dream them or do them? Yeah, I really like that tagline. So yeah, a really rather good film. Again, black and white, really good cinematography, really solid opening, and yeah, overall well done, if not overly spectacular in comparison to other thrillers of the time, because it was compared as a mini Hitchcock kind of effort, which is fine enough. There's worse praises you could get, or worse comparisons, I guess. So yeah, 2 black and white films in this box set: The Shadow of the Cat and Nightmare, and then 2 colour: Captain Clegg and The Phantom of the Opera. So yeah, really good box set this is. And yeah, even though I do kind of regret not being able to get into these box sets earlier, some of the films in those box sets I've not enjoyed before. So yeah, probably saved myself a little bit of trouble in that regard, because at the end of the day, where am I going to fit 6 of these? So yeah, that is probably a bit of a saving grace, quite frankly. But yeah, really good month for horror films this October. And yeah, in terms of new releases, because Smile came out, which was an excellent film, and Halloween Ends was far better than I was expecting it to be, and far better than Halloween Kills. And yeah, we've also had the likes of older first time watches as well. Like I said, Bloodstained Butterfly, and all sorts of numerous other ones that I'm not quite getting off the top of my head right now. But still, it's been a great October, and yeah, equaled at least in last year, if not bettered it. So yeah, nonetheless, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a happy Halloween. Bye.